welcome to the Soul of the Everyman on the Artist First Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Find them at artistfirst.com. Please send your questions and comments to dj@artistfirst.com. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here they are, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, man. And I am Michael Lyons.
Mm-hmm. And I'm Margaret.
And for long-time listeners, my voice is never very good, but tonight it's really bad. So we're going to have to bear with me.
Forewarned.
You're just going to have to surrender to the experience.
Mm-hmm. Surrender to the moment where we are here.
We're here. So that was a good segue, huh? It was a little lame, but it becomes me. Because I'm a little lame. But in truth, we are going to talk tonight about surrender, and I think this could be construed as a sort of a follow-on to a show that we did a couple weeks ago about acceptance. And when we looked at this topic, and I thought, well, there's so much there, between acceptance and surrender. I think that there's enough to do this sort of as a follow-on, or not a follow-on, but a sort of another dimension of this very interesting and sort of central concept. Because just to reprise quickly, and you guys can go back, of course, and listen to it, which you should do. The show on acceptance was, in essence, about allowing for reality, and there's a lot of egoic concepts around not allowing for reality. We explored that quite a little bit, and we went into sort of those forms of not accepting reality and sort of fighting against it. But tonight we're going to talk a little bit about surrender, which I think if you say to people surrender, Margaret, they immediately in their minds think of losing. In the game of life, you're supposed to win.
Right. Well, we can go to the definition of surrender. And there's a few interpretations of the word.
I always like us. It's always fun to go to the definition. Mm. So let's do that, and then we'll do the quote too. Mm. But yes, please do.
All right. Verb. To relinquish possession or control of something to another. Relinquishing control to another because of demand or compulsion. Synonym to that is relinquish. You're relinquishing.
I think that might be a word that we want to define as well, but you're giving up.
Mm-hmm.
Giving up control.
2 is to give up in favor of another, especially voluntarily. And 3 is to give up or abandon, like surrender all hope.
Right.
So that interpretation of it basically brings to mind surrendering your control of whatever the situation is, and you're losing.
Well, and the concept, if you're talking about war fighters, or you're just talking about any kind of game, when you give up, when you surrender, you're declared the loser.
Mm-hmm.
So in conflict, in war fighting, if you fly your flag of surrender, you fly let's say your white flag, or you lower your flag, you signal to your opponent or your enemy, however you wish to characterize this. You signal to them that I'm giving up. In fact, there's a phrase called the terms of surrender. And when you're trying to negotiate the terms of your surrender, you've already said in essence that I'm giving up, and I'm trying to figure out, well, exactly how am I going to give up?
Right. You're typical is like you're surrendering a city to an enemy.
Surrendering a city to an enemy, and
Mm-hmm.
and the interesting thing about the terms of surrender are generally, and you can find this throughout. There's many of instances, let's say in the Old Testament, where one king is warring with another, and then there's a place where you're going to issue your terms of surrender. And one of, again, in conflict, there's something called you're fighting your war. You can say, well, I have an object in mind, capture a city or whatever. But oftentimes you are doing what you would call total war. So you're not looking for terms of surrender except, abject, total, giving up. You have no terms on your surrender. You just give up everything. You are totally and completely defeated. So surrender, the term, the verb. If you say that to somebody, I think their mind is immediately drawn to places and times where they've forced somebody to give up,
Mm-hmm.
and places and times where they've been forced to give up. So you may surrender something and not be forced, but I think in more egoic terms, when you're talking about surrender, when you're thinking about surrender, the ego is always thinking of being forced to surrender. Either you've lost the game, if it's something similar, simple like that. In Monopoly, for argument's sake, you're going to give up at the end because you've lost the game, or whatever game it is. You may surrender your position in chess, for argument's sake. But if you're if you're in a conflict where everybody wants to win, only one person can, or one nation can, let's say, the other side, it never gives up voluntarily. It isn't a voluntary surrender. It's a, I've got no other choice surrender.
Right. It's I think most people think of surrender as admitting defeat.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are admitting defeat, you're basically saying, well, I lost.
Mm. There's another aspect to that, is that you're also admitting that you are less than.
Right. The implication is that you are less than, and the other person is better than you.
Better than you, yes.
So this is the main reason why surrender has that connotation of you deserve to surrender.
Hmm. So the ego, and we always like to bring the ego in at this point, the ego hates surrender, because the ego doesn't want to be thought of as a loser, doesn't want to be thought of as less than.
And I believe it's ultimately, I don't want to give up control, because surrender is giving up control, and the ego does not want its control taken away from it.
I was just going to go exactly there, so please expound. I mean, that's exactly it.
Well, just the situation or the field of play, the game, the ego believes that it can manipulate things in order to win. And if it's forced to admit defeat, it means that it has no power, powerless. And that's the one thing that most people will run away from. Say, no, I can't be powerless. And it's understanding the field of play. What is it that you're actually in that you're surrendering to, or surrendering up, or giving up?
Yeah, and I think what we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to try and expand and perhaps change the definition of surrender, or at least enlighten the definition of surrender a bit. and put it in a much different context. But yes, the ego resists surrender. And so, if we take this as the field, surrender, and prior to this, 2 weeks before or so, we had a show on acceptance. They are very similar. Okay, so acceptance, though, I think if you took the two words and you put them next to each other and said to somebody, what's the difference between acceptance and surrender? And somebody would say that, I think people would say, rather, that acceptance is an agreement to, in other words, you basically, you agree, whether with yourself or with somebody else, that, okay, I'm presented with a choice, and I accept that, this is what it is. This idea of I will take something, I will accept something, is almost like giving it permission.
It's acceptance of terms.
Right. Acceptance of terms.
And basically, it's almost a redefinition of the field that you happen to be in.
Yeah. But surrender is no. I think when if you were to say to somebody, what's the difference between acceptance and surrender, is you say, well, people force you to surrender, or they kind of force you to. It's interesting that you can accept surrender, but you're generally not given much choice. When you surrender, or when you give up, it's generally because you don't have another choice. And acceptance, I think, still allows the ego this sort of Band-Aid or fig leaf of, well, okay, all right, well, I chose to let that happen. You see, I'm still in control because I'm letting it happen. I'm accepting it. It's okay. But when you, so if we broaden this a little bit, the true way to being, the doorway to being, is in, if people say eliminating or burning away the ego, but I think in putting the ego into its proper place, or getting the ego out of the way, and in some ways making the ego surrender to the being. And that's not exactly what happens, but and in one way to train the ego, or to get the ego, in essence, to be less addicted to winning, is train it through accepting things. Accepting is a first step. And I think the second step, and perhaps a little bit harder for the ego, is surrendering. And surrendering is sort of an incoming position, not a negotiated position. The surrendering is, I'm already coming in with the openness. Surrender, I think, also implies a more open, a more, a less nuanced way of viewing reality, and work your way into surrender on the way of the journey of getting the ego kind of in its proper place, not predominant or thinking that it's predominant. This is, I think, a good way to continue this show from acceptance into surrender.
Well, surrender has to do with letting go of control.
Mm-hmm.
Acceptance has nothing to do with letting go of control. That's where the hot button is.
Yeah.
Acceptance is more, it's an inclusive state where you're taking in what the situation is presenting. Surrender means that you are giving out two different directions when you're dealing with a you as the center point of it. One is taking it in, and the other is giving it out.
Mm.
So when it comes to control, people want control, so they'll grab anything that seems to indicate an ability to control a situation, to have power over something. But to give power over, most people would rather fight than do that, or die before they do that.
I think this is the kind of the field that we want to talk about. And there's a lot of things here, but perhaps this is a good moment. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this might be a good moment to give our quote from our friend Eckhart, And we're going to post one quote, but I think this one's a slightly just more expanded, so we're going to use this one, and we'll correct it as we go forward. But you have it, have it there. Okay, I'm going to surrender
Control of the mic.
the airwaves here.
I see. Mm-hmm. Surrender becomes so much easier when you realize the fleeting nature of all experiences and that the world cannot give you anything of lasting value. Okay.
So there's a lot here, but one thing that's why the second part of this is kind of very illustrative. The fleeting nature of all experiences was where the other quote ended, but that the world cannot give you anything of lasting value. I think that's part of the resistance in surrender, is that you think you're giving up something of value. It's control, or your land, or your valuables, or whatever. Something is being surrendered. Something is being given up. You're losing control of a portion of your ego, or the things that you, and this is really what it comes down to, the things that the ego identifies with. So when the ego accepts, it can accept and remain egoic. You could say, well, I just can't do anything about this, but I will do it later. I'm gonna worry about it, and do something about it later. But it's still a good step. It's a good step to accept that this is where we are, and you can leverage that into a good being state. Accepting reality is a very good first step, because you really have said that I can't do anything about the situation, and that's okay. But surrender pierces the ego. It pierces it to its core. It really opens up that, because it's really starting with this idea that all the things that you have built the ego upon, all these little valuable knickknacks and all these identity linchpins, I'm this, I'm that, I'm powerful, I'm in control, I've got all this money and these cars and all this stuff. And, even though something might happen, I still have my money and my cars and my stuff. It's okay, but I can accept that and think about it and just move on. No, now you pierce the ego and you open it up, because you now say that nothing which the ego has based itself on, all the things that it values, this is vanity of vanities, all is vanity. This is Ecclesiastes. This is remember, man, thou art dust. The fleeting nature of the experience is something that you have to accept. And then if you surrender to that, if you say, okay, nothing that I hold upon, nothing that the ego rather holds upon, or that the ego identifies with, is permanent. It's, the ego sees the world as this static thing, that I'm accumulating more power and influence and money and clicks and all this other stuff, and I'm making sure I'm getting better and more in control, and and things happen, and I have to accept them. But no, surrendering is like saying, okay, wow, all this stuff that I'm trying to accumulate, no matter what I do, it grinds down into powder. No matter what I do, my body will age, my life force will begin to fade. I will not be here for a very long time. It might be 100 years, it might be less. Everything that I'm identifying myself with, I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other thing, well, yes, it's there for a period of time, and it fades. Tolle often talks about this as the wearing away of form, and the ego loves form. It just wants to hold on to form, and it wants all the things that it comes with it, and it wants to see itself in the forms that it acquires and holds on to. And surrender is really, you're now at the very doorstep, the very threshold of piercing the ego, and you just say, none of that is going to last. Surrender to my lack of control over what happens. I surrender to the fact that I will love today and enjoy today, but who knows what tomorrow brings, and that's okay too. And when you get that, you can feel your ego squirming and just doesn't like it at all. And it fights back and says, no, you have to hold on. Can't give up the things, my hair and my wrinkles and. But that's the difficulty of surrender. And yes, Tolle, also it becomes so much easier. But you really, I love Tolle because this does the easy part, Eckhart. Realizing that the fleeting nature of all experience means that the ego, has to say, yeah, everything I thought I was and am is dust in the wind, is just form. It's not what is eternal, and that's just a hard thing for the ego. It really opens it up.
Well, it speaks of vanity. Vanity is something that is intrinsic to an ego.
Mm-hmm. It's almost the definition.
Well, okay, let's look up the definition of vanity just for a moment.
Just for a moment.
Because, what would you say is the difference
between ego and vanity?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there might be two sides of a coin.
Okay. Vanity. Excessive pride in one's appearance or accomplishments. Conceit. Synonym is conceit. 2. Something about which one is vain or conceited. Worthlessness. 3 is worthlessness. Pointlessness or futility.
Something which you can refer to as vanity. All these words.
Right, a vanity.
A vanity.
If we go to Webster's, they're saying inflated pride in oneself or one's appearance, something that is vain. I hate when they use the same word.
Yeah.
Empty or valueless. 3, a dressing table.
Well, an armoire.
An armoire, yes.
Okay, let that one go.
Okay.
That's not what Ecclesiastes means.
Right. A fashionable trifle or knick-knack.
Yeah.
A small case or handbag or toilet items.
Right. I think we're going. But I think the nature of vanity. I do hate when they use the same word as a definition. Vanity is vanity. No, that's not right. But vanity is. I think you mentioned it. Something which you assign you assign an outsized value to, your appearance or your money or your, and you identify with. I'm always going to be handsome. Or I'm always going to be beautiful, right? And if I'm not, my vanity, my ego drives me to correct that because I can't see myself as anything less than 23 years old and bronzed and tan and fit. And I can't see myself as anything less than, powerful and consequential and, able to control my destiny and my world.
Mm-hmm.
And you see it everywhere. If you want to see a case study in vanity, you go online. Look at see all the vanity of I have 10,000 clicks and I have 5 million followers and I have every supercar and I have the cigars from the whatever part of Havana and all these things which are conceits and which explode the vanity and upon which the ego assigns tremendous value to. And yet each one of these things, if you examine them for even a moment, you say, well, this is going to go stale and you're still going to lose your hair and you're still going to, every one of them is ephemeral. And yet we pretend that they're somehow eternal.
Yes. That which you can touch and hold will not last. It all fades away. So, first of all, your person looks at that and goes, well, what do I have to work with then?
Right.
Who am I if I can't have my things?
Right.
My things show everybody else who I am.
Right.
And it's like, well, you are more than your things. Do you want to be there? Because there are those who will say, no. I want to be able to define myself according to my things, what I choose, and I'm choosing things, where I choose where I go, I choose what I do, I choose, so doesn't that mean that's who I am? Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, again, this is an aspect of who you are, but it's not everything that you are. And that's the belief. That's the safety zone, if you would. Because it will take courage for you to find out who you really are. You scare yourself. It takes courage. And the core of that is whether or not you wish to love what you don't know about you. That also brings up the fact that because there's so much unknown about you, you can wind up scaring other people because they don't want to know the unknown you. They want to know the known you.
That's it. That might be a whole other show. I like that digression. But if we come back to where we were, acceptance and surrender, the second thing, the thing that we're talking about tonight, surrender, pierces the veil, pierces the boundaries of ego, and really it causes a visceral reaction when you talk about surrender. If it starts to touch, now there's another great, wonderful analogy here. You always find them in the New or the Old Testament really, really well. Is that the widow's mite, that wonderful story. So what is that? What is the story? The story is that Jesus is looking at the temple collection box, where they give alms, if you will, and he's watching the people come up and they're putting coins into the box. And so somebody comes up, puts in 5 gold coins, another one comes up, puts in 10 silver coins, whatever. And then all this is going along, and he's giving his disciples an object lesson. He says, well, this old woman comes up and literally takes out 2 shekels or 2 coins, 2 pennies, so 2 copper, the lowest denomination coin, almost nothing, and she puts them into the box and hobbles into the temple. And he says to them, this woman gave more than all the others. And they say, well, of course, what do you mean she only gave 2 coppers? Because she gave all that she had. She gave from her essence. She surrendered, in essence, far more than all the other ones. They gave from their excess. They gave with great ostentatiousness, and they said, look at me, ringing bells and putting coins into the temple box and parading in. And this woman who gave what would be valueless to these others, 2 coins would be nothing to them. She gave something perhaps that she wouldn't be able to eat that afternoon or that next day because she had no money left. So in essence, the piercing of ego, the surrender here, the illustration is that when you surrender and when you realize that these 2 coins, although they are all I have, don't define me. They don't define who I am. They don't define my being. And if I'm impulsed to relinquish them, to give them up voluntarily, in this case the surrender is a voluntary thing, it's far more valuable than anything else that could have been, the other demonstrations of piety or of sacrifice. So this illustrates that once you pierce the ego, the realization that your being, your essence, that which is eternal, isn't defined by how much money you have. And so the surrender of that, it becomes an act of faith and trust and tremendous witness of your internal state of being. Your internal state of being is not so to walk it back. The egoic says, "Oh, I'm powerful, I'm wonderful, I'm great. Look at me giving money." But in fact, it's really an expression of weakness, because the ego says, "Only give as much as only it's just enough to impress people, but not something we actually need." It says give 10%, but no one will know if we only give 8%, because it'll be fine.
Yeah.
But when you surrender, when you give up all ties to outcome, to what will happen next, we don't know, but you surrender that. Well, I don't have any money left. This is completely, but I'm impulse to just give. This is my offering, and it isn't tied to being, and it isn't tied to ego. It's literally, this is what I give because it is the moment of now, and in this moment I'm impulse to give it, and I don't have any ties to it. It's also,
it's free.
It's
a free and open gifting.
Gifting, surrendering has a very good tie to gifting, because when you give, and this again to the Bible, you give freely. You give with no expectation that something will come back. So this is, and it ties to the Buddhist as well. You do things without expectations of outcome. You perform an action in surrender because you don't say, well, I'm investing this and I'm going to get 10% return. No, you say, I give this freely,
right.
and ego says, but you won't have anything to live on. And being says, it needs to be. There's no...
Do you believe in life?
Right. There's no... There's no control here, right, Margaret? There's no saying, well, I'm going to give 2 and I'm going to get back 3, so that's okay. Or I'm going to give 8%, not 10%.
It's not a business deal.
It's not a business deal.
Okay.
And it's not an egoic deal.
It's choosing to live life in the moment. And in that moment, she understood that she had to give her all and trust.
Faith is surrender.
Yes. Well, okay. The other giving out of their largesse, out of their extra, that's equivalent to virtue signaling that we have today. It's just things we do so people will say, oh, aren't you, oh, what a good boy
or girl you are.
You are. And in that moment, you're patting yourself on the shoulder. And I believe it's also said in the Bible that they've already got the reward.
Yes.
People are giving it, oh, aren't you great?
Well, that was a different story, but it's the same exact sentiment. They're giving to feed their ego, to get the reward of being seen being pious, or being seen giving, with great fanfare. They here's my 10%. Everybody, look at me.
And it's interesting because I know in Buddhist tradition, and you're seeing frequencies of a person, and a person's frequency when they give actually rises. And it's that feel good moment. It's like, oh, I've given, and yes, it feels good. But when you bring it into more of a worldly view, it's just an instant of feeling good. It's not you're feeling good because you gave out of the goodness of your heart, and nobody else has to know. Right? That's really raising your consciousness or frequency. When you're giving and you're making sure everybody else sees and they all pat you on the back, it raises your consciousness just for an instant, and you drop back down. Because it wasn't from the heart, it was from your mental machinations as well as your ego. Okay, oh good. So the minute someone stops praising you, that's it. That's gone.
Yeah.
All gone.
Well done. And so, but I want to come back. I think this is a very illustrative. So surrender is an act of faith, or So what is happening when you surrender? You're giving up an expectation of controlling the outcome. Now,
well, you're outside of it.
You're outside of it.
You're outside of it completely. You're saying that I don't know what tomorrow will bring. I don't know what the next moment's going to bring.
Right.
But I do understand that in this moment, this is what I must do.
Right. So back to the quote for a moment, and because this is the surrender pierces the ego because it relies upon something greater. It relies on being. It relies on and this is where it kind of leverages. It relies on acceptance of the reality of the moment of now. But it's much more than that. You have to say, in this moment of now, there's an experience happening which I have to be in. And then you in being rather than in ego. In ego, you're counting your money, or you're calculating things, and you're trying to figure out whether anybody's watching. But in being, none of that matters. You're totally within yourself. You're not within the world, but you are experiencing the moment of now. You're experiencing it in a surrendered state, which means that you accept this is where we are, and you are able to open. Again, this happens. You can talk about it for 20 minutes, but it happens in an instant. You are able to open yourself in the being of that moment to grace, and the grace isn't something special. It's not this ooh-wah, light falls down upon you and everyone watches you glow. No, the grace is it's in its essence answering this question, why am I here? I'm here exactly where I'm supposed to be being, and I may have something to do, and that doing is what you're there for. You may be there just a witness, but you may be there to put in everything that you own into another's hands, in essence. And when that message comes in, because if you surrender yourself to grace, you become God's hands. You become the moment of now. You act. You act in a momentless, timeless way. Exactly as you're in the wave, you're in the moment. You're doing exactly what the universe and the being requires, and you don't tie yourself. The impulse comes in that moment and says, "Give this one who stands in front of you, everything that's in your pockets, everything you own, your cloak off your back, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be money, but the point is that there's a moment of being that you are in." There's an action, perhaps, that you just do, and the ego will say, well, you're doing this. Don't you realize that you've got to, and you won't be able to do it, and that your investments are going to crash? And no, all that doesn't matter because you're in the moment, and you give in complete surrender, but it's also complete trust or faith, and it doesn't matter. There's no consideration of the next moment of now, because that's not what matters. The fleeting nature of the experience is that in this moment, in this exact moment of now, where you are exactly where you're supposed to be, surrendering, not just accepting, but surrendering, the action that you perform, it's not foreordained, but it is what needs to be. So you be in it, you perform it, and you're not looking to tie it to what might happen 10 minutes from now or what happened 20 minutes ago, is because your being is raised up and in frequency and in harmony with Source, which is the highest. You're in communion with the highest.
You're in divine flow in the moment.
In divine flow, which is a wonderful way. You're in divine flow for the moment. You're doing, because you're connected. And you can remain there, but this is a very high state. Because you're connected, you do what needs to be, and then the next moment. So that experience happens. You are completely within it, and it's gone. But the next experience, the only reason you realize it's gone is that there's another experience, and you surrender to that. And ego is gone from this.
Yes.
There's no tying to whether I'm powerful or not, but you are. There's no tying to whether anybody sees you doing it, but the witness will be there, or it may not be, but it may be important. But the point is you're not looking for it. You're not identifying with it. You're surrendering to the moment of now in the same way that the little monk did when he was accused of all these things. Is that so? But in the moment of now, this is what must be. My ego doesn't matter. My reputation, what's that? What this will cost me, what's that? I am here. I'm in the now. And there's no I. But the greater I says, this is the experience. I surrender to it and enter what Margaret just said, the divine flow. And you feel weightless, timeless, momentless, because you're in the divine flow. You're no longer in the temporal in that regard.
Right. It's phrased the fleeting nature of all experiences. When that is truly embraced, you realize how truly ephemeral what unfolds in front of you is. And to experience it, to truly walk in that moment and see the flower unfolding and being in that moment, present, aware, observing, without any boundaries, you become that moment instantaneously. You become that flowering bloom instantaneously, and you feel the ecstatic expression of it coming into its fullness. There is a fullness of the moment that flows by us continually. And whether or not we participate with it is always our choice. But in order to do that, you truly must surrender any concept that you're projecting that the way this is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
You are in now, aware, taking in what's in front of you. And there's no reference point. Maybe that's the best way to put it. Mm-hmm. There is no reference point in the experience. Most people say, what are you talking about? It's me feeling this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's transitioning past the me and into feeling the expression that's in front of you, where your awareness is looking, because there is an orientation to the awareness in that moment. The trick is it your awareness or the awareness? And there is a distinction coming to that clarity, because it's immense clarity in that moment. Coming into the ability to distinguish between the my awareness and the awareness. Mm-hmm. That is, catching that is like half a second. You got half a second to choose which pathway you are going to enter, because choosing my awareness begins to form a whole bunch of different ways the unfolding happens. And choosing the awareness is an expansion that has no words.
No referent.
It has no words. It has no concept. It has no I. It is. And you are within that divine flow that life is. You are in life. And it goes past any vocabulary I might happen to have.
It becomes a little exactly indescribable, but I just want to go back and make sure this point is beautiful. The my awareness versus the awareness, or just awareness. Okay, so please understand that on the way through acceptance and through surrender, you may still be in my awareness, and that's still good. You're still in an emanation of source. You're still very aware. You're expanded, but it's still me. It's still the little me. And it's in a very aware, very enlightened being. But you're part of, you have the half second or whatever to connect up to the awareness. It becomes the eyes and hands of God. You are, your individuality fades, and the ego hates that. But it becomes the individual. And it's not, you can do anything you want in that, and you may do everything that looks like you're doing exactly what, but it doesn't have you're not feeding that egoic I. You're not referent to the me. You just are. And when you meet people like that, the frequency can, as Margaret said earlier in the whole beginning of the show, it can scare people. You're seeing somebody who is operating in awareness and in the awareness. So they're connected up to source. It's like seeing it's the encounter with someone who is moving in that direction may be frightening to an ego because it's so clear, it's so clean, it's so present that it starts to even blow away or starts to even push away the other's ego, and that can be very scary. But before we go too far away from there, so let's start back a little bit further. We accept reality, that helps. We surrender this idea of outcomes and what about the next thing, this referential thing, and enter into an aware, present, give me the next action. Don't, I'm not going to tie it. So faith in this sense is divorcing yourself from outcomes. The difference between these states of acceptance and the beginning of surrender and then surrendering your ego away, surrendering your me away, is the difference between, being in an ocean and feeling the currents, being in an ocean and swimming with the currents, being in an ocean and then riding the wave, and then being the ocean and the wave and the rider at the same time. You work your way to presence, to this awareness, which doesn't have a referent anymore because it just is. So getting there is, as we're moving through this journey, acceptance is a big, big step because the ego doesn't want to accept anything. So you accept. Surrender is a huge step because it pierces the ego. It parts the veil. And you can get there many, many different ways. Sometimes you get there because of great suffering, because great suffering causes you to give up. You give up all expectation of outcome. You give up all idea of who you are. And that brings you closer, but it's a difficult road. But if you can get there through just realizing that all life is, in essence, vanity. We talked about vanity of vanities, all is vanity. That what we try to, put value in shouldn't define us. It's just a thing that happens right now, and it's going to move along. It's going to change. It's going to fade.
Well, if you approach it in terms of I'm here to play.
Yes, that helps.
And realize that there are many things that you wind up playing with. As long as you understand that that's all you're really doing is playing with a temporary form.
Mm-hmm.
And
don't identify with it.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. That's how we learn is by playing.
Mm.
That's why we came here, is to experience and to play, to expand, to begin. What does this relativity I to another mean? Or I to something out there? How people wind up working together in relationships. All fascinating. But understanding that this is play. And kind of like when the kids are making their characters up, their avatars.
Oh, the avatars, sure.
For a game, you're that avatar for that period of time, but that's not who you are. Doesn't mean you may not care about the avatar, but it does mean that you understand its limitations.
Something important here that just occurred to me, but it's tied to what you just said. You know, when you play, the temptation is to attach to something. It's my toy. And attachment is, the Buddhists talk about attachment. So you attach yourself to all these things. You attach yourself to your toys. You attach yourself to your to all these pieces of, as though they were going to, and the attachment binds you. It lowers your frequency. It takes you into the egoic state. So instead of playing, now you're acquiring, you're grasping, you're holding, you're mining. Mine, right? So reality comes in, and if you accept it, it breaks some of those attachments. You have to accept that this is just what it is, and I have to allow some of those control, some of those things that I've attached myself to, that I can't control reality, and that it is what it is. You're breaking some attachments. Surrender breaks so many more. You surrender the idea that it was your toy. You're just standing on the beach, and maybe you'll dig another hole. But the point is that experience no longer holds attachment. You don't identify with that. You don't identify with that previous moment or that previous activity. You were just playing, and in that sense, the surrender breaks attachment, because you say, well, this is just something that happens. It's not permanent. Not my toy. It's just an experience.
Well, it was fun while it lasted.
Very true. It was fun. Wasn't that fun? And what do you take away when you say something just like that? That's this beautiful thing. You take away one thing, just the experience. Well, you could say, what's the memory of it? Well, perhaps, but it's truly, if you put it into the eternal moment, if you lived it and were being in it and weren't attached to it, it's not a memory. It's an experience in that your being changed the very fabric of the universe in an eternal moment, and that experience that you were the hands and eyes of God in presence, in creation, for that fleeting moment, doing exactly what you were supposed to do at exactly the moment that it was supposed to be done. You bring back that experience, and many more like it, without attachment. It just is. It happened, and its echoes are an eternal experience within creation.
Right. And being able to accept that, to understand that this is a moment that passes by. What experience can I extract from it? What experience can I log into that eternity bank of mine? Because, the kids, whatever that game is, it's mining, where they're trying to find gems.
Minecraft.
And this, where you can mine the moment. So we have reached the end of our precious moments.
I'm going to surrender that.
And I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael.
And thank you for listening.